Hello everyone and welcome to another awesome game from round 2 of this year's Sharjah Masters. It is Hans, Moke and Niemann versus Jakhongir Vakhidov, and we've featured Vakhidov I think twice on the channel, but once in a very important game. It was the 2002 Olympiad game against Max Warmerdam, and it was a game that allowed Uzbekistan to claim first place in the 2022 FIDE Olympiad. So it was a great victory for him and his team. So obviously a very strong player, okay, we've seen quite a few games by Hans, and he gets around definitely, so no need for introduction there. But the game is very nice. I'm sure you guys will enjoy it. Let's check it out. So Hans with white opens with pawn to e4. We have pawn to e5 by Jakhongir, and now knight to f3, knight to c6, and bishop to b5. Okay, the Ruy Lopez is on the board. Obviously nothing spectacular will be happening in this game. a6, Morphy's defense. We have pawn to a4, bishop to a4, and now pawn to d6. This is the so-called modern Steinitz defense. c3, and now pawn to f5. This is the Siesta variation of the modern Steinitz of the Morphy defense of the Ruy Lopez. Very tricky stuff. We have e captures and bishop captures. So black gets rapid development for his light square bishop, but also weakens his king a little bit, as well, the absence of the f-pawn can be, a fairly, close call for black's demise. We have castles and bishop to d3, preventing pawn to d4 and just stifling Hans's development. We have rook to e1 and bishop to e7, and this is a fairly known position. For example, Vishwanathan Anand had it a couple of times. He even had it against the very strong Artur Yusupov in the candidates tournament of 1994, which was played in Vaikanze. Anand continued with bishop to c2, and interestingly, bishop to c2 is the strongest move recommended by the engine, even though in 1994 of course Anand did not have access to an engine. But Hans plays queen to b3, which is the top move recommended by the engine. And now we have pawn to b5. This is the first real big thing of the position. So far players maybe spent, Hans didn't spend even 10 minutes, Jakhongir spent maybe 13 minutes, but here pawn to b5 spent 25 minutes on this move, and Hans instantly replied queen to d5. Now again, there is a game that Anand played that had this exact same position. He played it against Javier Moreno Carnero, and in that game queen to d7 was played, which is of course best. You have to thread carefully here, because the knight is hanging and also the bishop is hanging, but also the light square bishop on a4 is hanging. So queen to d7 is best. B captures on a4 can be played, but it's not the best. But here we have bishop to f5, and this is a move that loses the game for Jakhongir, but it's not that clear why. Feel free to pause the video and try to take advantage of this move while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on finding this very nice idea. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is bishop to b3. Simple as that. You get your bishop out of harm's way and you threaten queen to f7 with check, followed by queen captures on f5. So how can you stop this? Well, king to d7. Also the knight on c6 is hanging. So king to d7 solves all of your problems, but only for the moment. Hans continues knight to d4. Now, what is knight to d4? To give you an idea of what our good friend the engine says, the engine just wants to grab a pawn and that's it. Like rook captures on e5, and the engine is very happy with a pawn. The bishop moves, the rook goes back, and the black continues development. Knight f6 attacks the queen, queen goes back, and the king escapes. So that is what the engine likes, but Hans does not like what the engine likes. Hans plays knight to d4. And what is this? Is he just offering a free knight here? Well, let's see what happens if you take this knight. Queen captures on f5 with check, king e8, queen to f7 with check, king d7, and now bishop to e6 is checkmate. So no, it's not a free knight. So knight captures on d4 is played, c captures, and now knight f6, attacking the queen, but Hans wants to continue the attack. So he moves the queen with tempo, the bishop on f5 is hanging, bishop to g4, and now queen to g3. E captures on d4 and pawn to h3. So of course Hans wants to win the e6 square for his pieces. Bishop to f5, Jakhongir of course doesn't allow that, and now queen f3, further harassing the bishop. pawn to g6, and now, while you do want to play pawn to g4, here Jakhongir's idea was just give up the 2 pieces for the rook, and, you know, hope for the best, like captures, captures, captures. Now you play c6, you consolidate a little bit, you get the c7 square for your king. Maybe you can survive this. But here, after g6, pawn to d3. Hans prepares another piece to launch into the attack. Pawn to h5, now stopping g4 indefinitely, and bishop to g5. We have pawn to c6, now freeing up the c7 square for the black king, and knight to d2. And now, okay, you have to be a little bit careful. The c6 pawn is weak, the rook is coming to c1, queen to f8, and now we have pawn to a4. Preparing rook to c1 and a captures on b5, queen to g7, and now rook e to c1. You could also play rook a to c1, but Hans wants this rook on the a file, with some ideas that if, let's say, you block with this rook and then you cannot capture here, you can capture a captures on b5. Then if you take with the a pawn, first you take the rook, and then if the rook captures, you take on c6, and if this pawn captures, then you have queen to b7 with check, and black is in big trouble. So here pawn to d5, blocking the white queen, queen to f4 now. Just going after the pawn here, pawn to c5 defending, and now knight to f3. Going after that newly acquired e5 square, bishop to d6 attacking the queen, and knight to e5 with check. And here, there is no good move for Jakhongir. Best you could hope for is to capture here, but again, you have the problem of the hanging knight, and if you defend, let's say rook h to f8, then rook captures on c5, and black's entire position just falls apart. For example, rook a to c8 is met with rook captures on d5 check. You cannot even capture as the queen hangs, so this is dead lost. So after knight to e5 check, king to c7, and now look at this beauty. It's the beauty from the thumbnail. Rook captures on c5 with check. Not a lot to consider here. You could move the king, but that will not help you. So bishop captures on c5, thinking maybe there are some discoveries here, but Hans is not interested in any discoveries. Even though knight captures on g6 will lead him to victory, rook a to c1, Hans continues with the strongest move recommended by the engine. King to b6, defending the bishop, and now we have bishop captures on f6. Unfortunately for Jakhongir, you cannot take back. If you take back, then look at this. Knight to d7 with a royal fork, and you cannot take with the bishop as queen captures queen with check. So yeah, you just resign here. So a queen to h6 seems to be forcing a queen trade, because if the queen moves, the rook on c1 hangs. Knight to d7 check once again. And this is just beautiful, beautiful stuff here. You have to take the knight, or you don't have to take it, but what do you play? If you play king to a5, just queen to c7 with check. If you go, what other options do you have? You have king to b7, then bishop captures on d5 with check, and after the king moves, let's say knight to b6, and this is now checkmate with the two bishops doing very good work here. So after knight to d7 with check, we have bishop captures on d7, and now the position is completely winning. But I'm sure you guys know what's the move that has to be played. Of course, that move is pawn to a5 with check. Claim the c7 square for the white queen, and that's it. Also, if you go to c6 to sort of prevent this, then you just blast through with rook captures on c5. King captures bishop e7 check, king to c6, and now bishop captures on d5 check. King captures and queen to e4 will be checkmate. Beautiful stuff here. So after a5 check, king captures on a5, and now queen to c7 check, bishop to b6. Or you start the king march, king to b4, and now after queen captures on c5, king captures on b3, queen to a3 will be checkmate. So after queen c7 check, bishop to b6 was played, but now the king can no longer use the b6 as an escape route. So rook to a1 with check. We have king to b4, and now just queen captures on b6. We have king captures on b3, queen captures on d4, threatening queen to c3 checkmate. So rook to h8, guarding the c3 square, but very little you can do here. Queen captures on d5 with check, king to c2, and now pawn to b4, the move that wins any game, and this game is no different. Whatever you get play, you just get checkmated. Here king to d2 was played, sort of trying to run away, and although you can win this many different ways, Han just plays bishop to g5 check, and he was in this position on move 37 that Jakhongir Vakhidov resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. Once you take here, you will force the black king somewhere, but you have you don't have enough material for anything. Like king captures, queen to e3 with check, whatever you play, like rook a2 check, king to b1, queen to b3 check, king to c1, queen to b2 check, king d1, and let's say queen to d2 is checkmate, but also any other variation will end in checkmate. So yeah, brilliant stuff here. After bishop to g5, Jakhongir resigned, and a very, very nice victory for Hans Niemann in round 2 of Sharjah Masters. And he also won his game in round 3, and in round 4 he faced none other than Saleh Salim, who we've seen absolutely demolished Fedosev in the previous video that I've shown. If you haven't seen that game, do check it out. Could be I mean, I'd be scared if there was a better game played in the tournament than that game. But Hans faced him, and they decided to go for an early draw. Saleh played some. I don't want to trick you guys. I can't even tell you the exact number of moves. Just give me a second. Yeah, like 13 moves. Some weird line with pawn to h4, some Sicilian with pawn to h4, and he offered the draw, and Hans accepted. Because probably Hans had Saleh had the white pieces. He also had over an hour and a half on the clock. Hans had to think a little bit. Obviously, he didn't feel like thinking, and he accepted a draw. But yeah, I mean, Hans is very strong. Obviously, everyone will be happy with a draw. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Very nicely done by Hans. Just completely blasting through the position after this queen to h6. Just look at this 97 check, captures a5, and then the king hunt begins and very quickly ends. So yeah. Beautiful stuff here. So that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. As usual, you know, keep suggesting those games. Use hashtag suggestion in the comments. If you have a nice game, I will look over it and I will show it. I look after all of the comments. I look over them, and if it's a nice game, you can be sure that I will show it. I would like to thank a friend at the library, Yomis Barban, Hi Rilero, Michael LeBlanc, and Gerhard Henkelman for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check two of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.